Hello guys, today we will be talking about another application of content to the graph. In this case, how do you apply elasticity concepts to your graph? And what's the graph that we are talking about? So for your elasticity concepts, you have these three main ones. Although for your PED, you have the accompanying PES. But for PES, it is not so commonly tested. So you just it's good to know the relationship of PES on different goods and what could affect the PES value. But for most of the questions, they will talk about the impact on the demand or the quantity demanded. So today we will look at how do you apply them on the graph. Because usually when you look at the content of PED, YED, and XED, it is quite straightforward. So you have the three definitions here, which I will recap. But in terms of how do you show them on the graph, students may be confused because perhaps they can only qualitatively explain but cannot show on the graph. So you have to know, apart from what the concept means, how do you show it on the graph? So because this will enhance your graph analysis as well, especially important for your 4 marks and above. Okay, maybe 5 marks and above for CSQ and your 10 mark, 15 mark in your essay. So when you do demand supply analysis, where possible, layer on your elasticity concepts. So for PED, we learned that this is about how a change in price of a product A changes its quantity demanded. So how the PED affects the graph is through different gradient of the demand, because this is about the change in quantity demanded with response to a price change. So you are looking at the same graph. So there is one gentler one where PED is more than 1, and for PED less than 1, it is steeper. So I will not go through in too much detail the concept of PED, YED, XED because you would be familiar, but I really wanted to focus on how you apply on the graph. Okay, then for your YED, this is about how the demand of good A change with a change in income of the consumer. So in this case, because it is looking at a non-price change, which is in this case your income, it will not be about quantity demanded. It will be about demand. So you can expect that it will be a shift of the demand curve because it impacts the demand. Whereas for PED, it affects the quantity demanded. So it's a movement along the curve. Okay, then for your XED, this is about two goods. So are you substitutes, are you complement, and this impacts the size of the XED. So this is about how a change in price of a good B affects the demand of a good A. So first you have to establish the relationship between these two goods, and then you can determine does it increase or decrease the demand of good A when the price of the related good change. Okay, so in your application to the graph, how you can do is that you will still draw your typical demand supply curve, but how do you infuse elasticity into it? So a normal demand supply curve will look like that. PQ, then you have your Q0, P0, D0, S0. So usually when you are not using elasticity concepts, you will at best say, okay, because of certain reasons, my demand increase or my supply increase, or it could be my demand decrease, my supply decrease, whatever, based on what the question says. But now that you have the elasticity concepts in play, you will have to show them on your graph explicitly as well. So for example, if now I have a demand that I have established to be PED more than 1, so I will have to do some adjustment to my graph. So rather than drawing a objectively cross shape for your equilibrium, right, you have to draw the graph such that it reflects the elasticity. So in this case, because my PED assume more than 1, I will draw my demand to be gentler. So rather than you see on the graph of the left, I will draw it slightly gentler because I have established and I want to show that I'm applying PED. Okay, then if PES is not applicable, then you don't change it. It is still your same S naught. Okay. So depending how your PED is, it will affect the slope of your demand curve. So this is how you show PED. Okay, then for the YED, you only use it when the question talks about a change in income. Because if the question didn't talk about it, then you shouldn't use it, because then you cannot be sure if there is an income change. If there is no income change, then YED is not applicable. So you have to only use it when the question talks about a possible rise in income because of economic growth, or a fall in income because of recession. Then you can apply accordingly. So how the YED works is that you will show it on the graph through a shift. So a shift, we assume that income increase. So if the good that you are looking at is a normal good, be it a necessity or a luxury good, then we can shift the graph accordingly. So now assuming that we are looking at a luxury good, so it could be an electric vehicle. So we show that because of the income increase and EV being a luxury good, the demand for it will increase based on YED, because the YED will be positive. So you show that D not increase to D1 because of the YED. So here let me denote. So I have applied my YED. Then for my demand curve that is gentler, this is applying my PED. Okay, then now let's layer on the third elasticity, which is our XED. So this one, usually for your question, it is very rare that you need to apply all three because it will be very complicated. At best, you apply 2. Most common one being PED and YED lah. I have seen questions that talk about PED and XED or YED and XED. It depends on which one is applicable. So now say if we want to also talk about XED, then you only use it when the question has something about a good relating to this main good that you are looking at. Because it is always about how a related goods price change, then your demand is impacted. So if your own price change, it is a movement along, it is not applicable. So you only use XED when they talk about a related good. So you first have to establish, is this related good a substitute to the main good or a complement? Because if you didn't establish that, then how are you able to tell the XED value? Because for substitute, it is positive. For complement, it is negative. So say you have a related good that is mentioned either in CSQ or preamble. So maybe here we give an example that the main good is a cake market. Then the related good we talk about, okay, something that is a substitute to cake could be muffin, because generally to people these are dessert that has a sponge-like texture. So perhaps to consumer they are substitutes. So if the price of muffin increase and the cake being a substitute of muffin, it will have a higher demand. So how do you show it is that you can further shift the demand curve out. Okay, running out of space, so I draw the shift in demand to be very small, but essentially I'm layering on the application of the elasticity. So from D0 to D1, it is applying your YED, and for my D1 to D2, I'm applying my XED. So you see how I am not just applying the elasticity concept by definition or description, but I show on the graph, and this has impact to the market because this movement of the graph actually further increases price and quantity as well. So you need to show how the involvement of the elasticity concept actually contribute to your analysis. Usually it is to add texture to your analysis. So it's not just simple like, oh, demand shift right, supply shift left, things like that. You layer on more consideration that actually makes your analysis more rich lah. This is what you need minimally for a 10 mark essay, because you imagine a 10 mark is not enough to just write demand supply factors. Your elasticity, where applicable, do talk about it. Okay, so this is the end of the elasticity application on demand supply curve. So see you at the next episode. Bye bye.